The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.
We're so thrilled to have on an award-winning multi-instrumentalist. He's a guitar teacher, but also just a great musician and composer. Justin Johnson, thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here, man.
Justin, I think we've been talking about this for like years, and you are such a busy man, and finally got you to come in studio with talking about the Biscuit House. And, listening to this whole album, I've got to brag on you. This album sounds amazing. You've got 12 total albums, but also the artist that you brought on with you to where you had to fly Will Lee in,
right.
The legendary bass player, just to play on this album.
Yeah, well, most of what I do is solo, right. Most of what I record. But what's great about that is that when I do want to do a full band album like the Biscuit House, I can think who's going to be great. I can kind of form a band every time.
Right.
And so when I was planning this album and really wanting to capture that like rock and roll, classic rock, southern rock, blues vibe that I wanted with the album, it's like who's going to help me create this sound? And so there's 3 other musicians on the album. Rick Lano plays drums,
Amazing.
Mike Webb on keyboards, and Will Lee on bass.
And you.
And me,
Yeah, on a myriad of guitars.
Yes, exactly. It is like a guitar album.
It is, which I love. I think I told you this while I was watching and listening, and I love the music videos, and they're shot so well, but each song sets a mood.
Right.
And you've been able to do that with your past albums too, to where you have music featured on Dodge, NPR, Animal Planet. It's like all these different things with your music, and it is amazing to me because I originally knew you from your work with the shovel guitar. But then you toured internationally.
Yeah.
And then you actually started moving in here to Nashville like 2015, 2016, and now you're just like a regular here.
Well, it's home now for sure. It's been home for a while, and this maybe the thing about instrumental music. With my experience trying to play instrumental music, make a living being an instrumentalist,
right,
is a lot of times those early challenges become a blessing once you kind of persevere through them. And it wasn't easy when I first started touring as an instrumental guitarist and kind of in a place where usually people are expecting bands and expecting a certain type of thing.
Yeah.
And learning how to entertain an audience by yourself on guitar or a busy bar, you know what I mean? There's something like that. Was so vital to what ended up being now, I do have like soundtrack work and I have work as an instrumentalist, and what you do when you create a mood and you create a sound without lyrics, without vocals, is that it can be used in a lot of contexts where vocals might get in the way. Something like, I think that's why I have the licensed work that I do on television or video games, things like that.
Which is amazing, but also, you are such a student of it, Justin, to where, what I admire about you, and you and I are both blues fans and everything, is to where you've progressed the older blues sounds with the tunings, with the slide guitar playing and everything, and now you're teaching this to new, younger audiences, and you're keeping it new and fresh. So not only is your music being used, you're called on as a session player, and with what you're doing with sync and everything, for music videos, for TV, for film and all, but you're also sharing your knowledge. And you just came off of a 2-month deal teaching lead guitar, and you were telling me how you were doing it to where it's like you give them 5 notes and say, okay, these are the only 5 notes you can play until the next lesson.
Well, that to me is what lead guitar comes down to. It's not so much how many notes you can play, how quickly, nothing wrong with playing fast or anything like that, but when I was getting ready to teach this, and this was I called it like a lead guitar deep dive on my instructional platform online. And when you're teaching something that you maybe know already, you have to then reverse engineer what you're actually doing, and you have to think like, what is the best way to teach someone? How can I make them avoid all the pitfalls and all the wasted time I took going down this road and that road? But when it boiled down to it, I think what really communicates emotion with lead guitar, especially, are the inflections, like string bending, and these the way you attack the note and the way you add vibrato and these techniques. So the way I approach that deep dive, like I was telling you earlier, is I did it in 4 parts, and every class I would give them like 5 notes on the fretboard to focus on and say, you need to tell a story with these notes before we do anything else. And then expand that to another position. And each of these too, like, you know, these 5 notes, these are what B.B. King used for 90% of his solos. So if you can't do that justice, then you don't need to move on, you know, because B.B. King didn't, you know. And
made a career out of it.
Or Albert King, there was a different 5 notes. And that's what's great about kind of tapping into the history, giving students, you know, a real life example of what you can do with this small concept. And then by the end of it, teaching them how to sort of bridge the gap, put it all together, and connect those dots so that they can, you know, do their own thing with it.
But I've got to bring this up though too, Justin, because I mean I've followed your career from when you hit the scene with your early album. I believe 2014 was your first album, and just everything you've done with it over the years. And you took, you know, originally people thought, oh, that's so cool with Justin doing, you know, the slide guitar, you know, on a shovel. And then but then you expanded this whole bass now to where, you know, you've really created your own slide guitar empire. I mean, you know, to where
like an evil empire of slide guitar.
In the best way. But you know, but I mean, you really, I mean, it's a compliment to where, you know, to you and to your vision, you know, from, you know, being a touring musician and taking this and being out on the road with 12 instruments to where then now you've got a home base and you're sharing your knowledge, you're still making new music, you're composing. I mean, when you've got people like John Carter Cash, you know, who pretty well known here in Nashville, who is reaching out to you and giving you compliments, and you're working with him, he's working with you. Ted Nugent giving you huge compliments. I mean, all of these artists, you know, that have worked with the top guitarists in the world are still acknowledging you.
It still blows my mind, you know, it's so awesome. And that's such a dream when you start doing something you're passionate about. When I first started playing guitar, and listening to these people and being inspired by these legacies, and then, you know, down the road, 10, 15 years later, you're being creative and creating things with these people and doing what you always dreamed of. It really is a dream come true, and I never take that for granted. It's magical. It really is. It's awesome.
Well, you know, and I've got to say this also to where, you know, you would think as fluent as you are in all styles of guitar, and once again, something that impresses me with you so much, Justin, to where you're able to move between different styles of music and everything. You're not locked into one thing. But you started out learning guitar on a broken instrument that only had 1 string. So essentially a diddly bow, as you and I know it, that many of the original blues musicians, like Buddy Guy, started out on, except they were nailed to the, you know, on the porch.
Yeah.
You started out with a 1-string instrument.
Well, man, it's funny because I talked to my mom years ago and asked her where this guitar came from, because it was always around the house. It was this old Stella, this old beat up Stella, and had this rusty high E string on it. And I think I remember playing the dun 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 dun, you know,
totally.
And like Wild Thing and stuff on this little
you had
note.
Louie and Wild Thing right there.
That's right there. That's rock and roll.
You needed a tennis shot.
Yeah, exactly. Which isn't a bad thing before you go on the road.
Right, yeah.
But it's funny how full circle these things come around when you really think about them and honor them. That, you know, when I finally did pick up a 6-string guitar and fell in love with rock and roll and classic rock and southern rock, that led me to, you know, blues and country music and some of these older blues styles. And then when I started getting into these homemade instruments and the art and the history of these homemade instruments, which might have 1 string, like the diddly bow, or 2 or 3 or 4, you have to start creating your own language and your own tunings, and you have to think like, okay, I'm not playing these patterns that people taught me on 6-string anymore. I have to create my own approach.
Right.
And
that's a leap.
It is, and you have to play a lot with the slide guitar because a lot of these instruments don't have frets, you know, like the shovel guitar, for example.
Yeah, which luckily Nikki burns in the frets, though.
Exactly, yeah, thanks, Nikki. But, you know, that led me back to the like history of the fact that a lot of these blues legends that I learned from started out on homemade instruments too, and they started out on diddley bows and 3-string guitars. And just to see how all of these influences kind of cross-pollinate and inform who you become as a guitar player, it's like, it's kind of, like clicked for me and made me appreciate so much the history of all of these intertwining musical genres and how really, I mean, that's, I guess, why I don't think of myself necessarily as a blues guitarist or a rock guitarist, but as just a musician, because it's all intertwined and it all informs one another.
Well, you and I were talking about that too, and certainly being here in Nashville, to where you're known for being able to take any stringed instrument and make great music with it, but also certainly with the walking bass and with the rhythm and things like that, it merges elements from earlier blues, but also Travis style country music picking, and you're merging those, and now you're playing also harp guitars in your spare time.
Right.
Working with Emerald.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, like when I look at a harp guitar, which I was saying, you're the first person I've told about that. Funny you could, but I'm looking at it like you have a 6-string guitar and then you have all these 1-string diddley bows coming off the side.
Which is true.
And trying to think about ways that I could maybe, put my own spin on that.
Yeah.
And, but when you play, and this from playing so many different types of stringed instruments, but when you start to learn the mandolin and then the ukulele and then the banjo, and then you go back to 6-string guitar and it's like 6 instruments instead of one. Each of these strings has a different tone and a different voice and can do different things. And you can split the fretboard and play bass lines while you're playing melody lines. And that's one of the things on my platform that I teach a lot of people who are interested in learning my fingerstyle approach, is that when you don't look at like the sheet music, look at, like, listen to what's going on. You have 2 or 3 parts going on at the same time.
Right.
And generally they're 2 easy parts, but when you play them together, it's a lot more difficult.
Oh, definitely.
But if you
it's almost like a drummer.
Yeah.
It's like a drummer, but with guitar, because you're working the bass line, you're working the rhythm, and you're playing melody.
Right.
And you make it look so easy. And I mean, I got to brag on you again, to where, you are known internationally now. The following that you have, through YouTube, through Instagram, through all your social media, Facebook, it's like you have a platform now to where you can do concerts at your house. Not that you didn't enjoy traveling to Tasmania and Australia and UK.
Exactly.
But now you can do those concerts from your home.
And it is awesome how many more people you can reach now. And I'm so blessed and happy to be living in this era as a musician when you have the internet there at your fingertips. And before, you had to rely on so many other people to allow you to get in front of people, and that kind of thing. And you couldn't, it was so difficult, if not impossible, at certain times to, that you couldn't really make it unless you were doing the right thing for other people and serving those people in a certain way, playing what they want you to play.
Right. And as you brought up
to a
too,
degree,
harder as an instrumentalist.
Absolutely.
But also you do such a great job at setting mood.
Right.
And also, as you and I both know, sometimes just like, with some of the other amazing instruments, but like with the shovel guitar, which, you offer these on your website now, and this started from a fan bringing one to you, and you played it at a show.
Yeah, it happened when I was on the road. I started playing a lot of roots instruments, and people would come out to shows, they'd be builders, and they'd show me what they were building, and it'd be like, that's awesome, and I'd be playing it. So by the end of, by the time we were settling in Nashville, I had probably a couple hundred of these instruments, you know what I mean, from the years on the road. And I had a backyard for the first time ever, which was nice. You put those two together, and Nikki and I were in the backyard, and I was picking on the shovel guitar.
Yeah.
And I came up with this riff, and like so many times when I'll come up with a riff, I'll ask Nikki, film this. Let's try to capture like the moment here. And played this song off the cuff and posted it online, and it went viral. It was really amazing. It was really surprising, and it took off. And I started getting a lot of requests from fans to build them a shovel guitar.
Wow.
And being a musician, when you get an opportunity, you learn not to pass one by.
Exactly.
So we actually created, like our workshop. Nikki's dad, who's like 93 now, he is a great woodworker. He had a workshop.
Yeah.
And he was living in North Carolina. We actually moved Nikki's parents out to Tennessee, and he helped me start building these shovel guitars.
Wow.
I taught him how to do it, refine the design, figured out all of these elements from, that I knew from repairing guitars over the years and that sort of thing.
Because when you own them, at a point, you have to repair them yourself.
You have to repair them, yeah. And so I never, a year before that, if you told me I was building shovel guitars, and selling signature shovel guitars.
Right. With signature slides and signature guitar picks.
It would have sounded crazy, but it's really amazing.
Also, I've got to say, and we've got a shot of it right here, to where, these are well-made instruments. Once again, having watched you on the videos and everything, I didn't know what to expect, but it's like, but the way you've got the tuners, the machine heads into the handle, you've got the metal nut here, you've got signature Justin Johnson pickup right there, which you work with a company on that, the volume control, the plug-in at the bottom. But then what amazed me also is, look how well that's done here with the wiring and everything. I mean, it's well crafted.
Well, that's the thing, and it's like anatomy class, when you get into guitar construction. Because I like to think about the shovel as like an arch top. You've got like the arch top there. The break angle, they call it at the bridge, is just like you would get on an arch top, and making sure there's enough break angle. Everything about the design of the shovel, I think that's why you see people play air guitar with it, is that it's really designed to be a great guitar.
Right.
And tempered steel has some of the best sustain you can get.
And it works for grounding the pickup also.
And electric. It's really a miracle of modern science.
Well, I think you have definitely evolved this from the original concept. What you've done with it, and I know that you've got the package on your website also, to where it's got a slide, it's got the shovel, it's got a tutorial, but also you've done such a great job. And you and I were joking earlier about when you used to have the DVDs, and now you've got this subscription set up on your website. And I really enjoyed your website, Justin. Just going through, I think there should be more videos of you on there, but it's still, it's a great website, and I could find everything, like all the cool merch you've got and everything. It's just you're doing so much. And with the Biscuit House album, just watching you play live and that you recorded it, you've got your own home studio, but also you did it at Blackbird Studio.
Right.
And had to come up with a special method for cueing each other on the solos.
Yeah. So again, because I play solo, and a lot of my albums, especially my bootleg series, is all solo arrangements. But when it comes time to want to put out, I get that bug and I want to put out like a rock album. I want to get a band, I want to go to the studio and put out a rock album. And that's what happened with the Biscuit House. Pandemic was ending, and it's like, I got to get back in the studio, got to get the guys in there.
Totally.
And what I wanted, though, so much with the Biscuit House in the studio, production-wise, was I wanted that sound of that 70s or 60s rock and roll, that heavily like bluesy influence, but that nice southern rock or classic rock sound. And having learned a lot about the production of those albums, you learn, they didn't have a lot of the technology that musicians lean on now.
Right.
Back then. So you had to get it more in the moment. It had to be more like a live performance. And that's why a lot of those songs sound like that. You know, when you hear Zeppelin or you hear Freebird or something like that. They're not so much, like we do now, I think, saying, I'm going to fix that later, or I'm going to kind of get the bass track and add to it.
Pro Tools.
Nothing wrong with that, and I've done plenty of that too on sessions, but with this album, we wanted that feeling of it being live and that palpable energy you get from just interacting with the other musicians.
Yeah.
Being excited about who you're playing with and that feeling. And so one of the ways to do that is that we had to cue each other between solos. So when I was done with a solo, I wanted that solo to go on as long as it needed to, instead of like sometimes you'll say, you take a solo for 16 measures or you take a solo for 8 measures. But so in order to do that in the studio, because we're in different rooms, there's isolation booths in the studio, we had to invent a new piece of technology in order to cue the other members of the band. And so luckily, the executive producer of the album, his name's Steve Price, he's amazing with technology. And I was talking to him on the phone about it. I'm trying to figure out a way to develop a cue system. And so he's like, well, let me put together a circuit board and some lighting. And so I was like, do it. And when he came down for the session, he came with this big box of wires and lights. And so I would be in one room and be finishing my solo, and I'd step on a box on the ground, and a light would go off in front of all the other members of the band in different rooms. Wow. So we could really have that live engagement and that live energy without sacrificing the sound quality you can get by being in different rooms in the studio and that kind of thing.
And I think it ends up sounding sterile then, but also what I love about the Biscuit House, and certainly your past, albums as well, have all been incredible, as you can hear on Dodge commercials. But it's just, it sounds fluid. You really, all of the musicians are able to shine within this. It isn't just Justin. It's you and the whole band and the keyboard solos and everything. But it's great work. I want to make sure for our viewers, with everything that you've got going with the Biscuit House, and I know you got that online as well, and you've got your lessons. You have obviously the incredible shovel guitars and some other cool merch on the website too. Where should our viewers go to keep up with everything and also to sign up on the lessons?
Right, so you can get justinjohnsonguitar.com is the lesson platform. You can get to the store from there. Everything, that's the place to start. Okay. justinjohnsonguitar.com. Easy to remember.
And then you can go down the rabbit hole for the videos and for all the other great stuff you've got going on. Well, I'll tell you what, it's great to finally have you on the show. Congratulations on the Biscuit House and on your incredible music career that you've created on your own, starting from a one-string diddly bow to now having this just ridiculous international platform.
Thank you so much.
Great having you in. Check him out. Go to his website. Be sure and listen to the Biscuit House. You're going to love the music as much as I do, but go deeper. Listen to his past albums as well, and check out these awesome guitars because you may need one. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks a lot.
The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.